This retreat was not an accident. It is not accidental in any way that leadership skills and street skills have something in common. We think, which is why we did the retreat to begin with, that when you improve your capacity for leadership, you improve your ability to acquire skills, but also as you improve street skills, you improve your capacity for leadership. So, the most obvious reason is this retreat helps us help the youth that we serve better. It also exists to celebrate the local knowledge that each of us brings. Our own lives, in our own individual ways, we all know things. Knowing is a human enterprise. And so this retreat is structured in a way so that there's not a single person from which the knowledge flows, but it actually is a mutual, frankly, invitational approach to teaching and skill acquisition. Because the truth of it is that we all, each of us, has lessons to teach each other, and each of us has lessons to learn from the other as well. But if it were just about skills and skill sets and leadership and things like this, I don't think this retreat would be what it is. It's also about building real community. So I don't define community in a radical or strange way. I consider community a group of people who pull together to help each other. Community for me is not defined by walls or by neighborhoods or by ideologies. It's not the people who look like me or think like me or live like me. Community are all of the people who live in the place that are touched when the wind blows and made wet when the rain falls. If you read government reporting documents about homelessness, they use the word community all of the time. They say things like, community partnerships provide these services, or volunteers came from the community to help homeless people, or this program helped homeless people rejoin the community. But if you pay attention to all three of those uses of community, it's always the places of the homed. The programs come from the places of the home. The volunteers come from the places of the homed. And to be reintegrated into the community is to get a home. And I find this definition of community, frankly, disgusting. It reviles me. The idea that just because you don't have enough money to buy a place out of the public space, that you become someone who's worth pulling for and worth listening to and worth living with. So I see Stand Up for Kids as a real community. That's what we are, that's what we do. I do not want to be the leader of Stand Up for Kids, the 501c3 nonprofit organization. I want that to be my paperwork, right? I want those to be details about how our taxes get paid and how our money flows. I want to be a regular old community, just a group of people, only set apart, so no different than a group of people who pull together to help each other, only set apart by our radical refusal to exclude people who are different than us. So then with this in mind, what is the purpose of our retreat? Sure, it's to better understand the issues of homelessness that we face. But more to the point, it's so that we can better understand each other by sharing our stories, sharing our space, sharing our ideas, frankly sharing our bodies to come together to live in a particular space. Now, there are moments where all of this sounds really awesome, right? Build a community, solve all of these problems, but I'm sure that you experience, just as I do, a lot of doubt also. Can this be done at all? Is this futile? Certainly when I walk, through the zone, I'm struck by just the massiveness of it all and how many problems there are to solve. And I feel way too tiny to even be able to make a difference whatsoever. So while I hope you've been filled with some confidence and some love and this idea that we are together with each other, I also imagine that it's somewhat daunting too, to look at that and say, wow, we've bitten off a pretty big problem. And it's true, there are days where the problems in the world seem totally impossible, like they can't be changed. One part of the world, it floods, right? And in another part of the world there are droughts. People die of water here too much, people die over here because there's too little water. And some people ask, well, why this cruel irony, right? That where there's a drought someplace, there's a flood somewhere else. I think the real question, though, with too much water here and too little water over there, is how can we build better pipes? Because with every crisis of scarcity, I believe there is a corresponding crisis of bounty. It's true. The poor and hungry, there are a lot of them, and they're here in this valley. But there are a lot of us who overeat. So here's Tim's Save the World Tim's Easy Save the World diet plan. 2 steps. Pick 1 meal a week and fast from it. Don't eat it. And instead give it to somebody who needs it. So if you do the math, on any given night there are 2,700 homeless people who live in Maricopa County, which is a ton, right? 2,700 people. That's a lot, right? But there are 4 million people who live in this county. 4 million. So if the 4 million fast 5% of their weekly food, we could feed 200,000 people, which is more than what we need. It's more than 10 times what we need. It's actually 75 times the amount of food that we would need to serve the people who live homelessly. And this isn't just hypothetical. Time and time again, here at Stand Up for Kids, we have a problem arise only to discover that there is a resource ready for us right around the corner. Kristen does this all the time at her meetings. We run out of water. She goes to a coalition meeting only to find that another organization has more water than they can possibly store. Drought, flood. And I used to think this was luck, but it continues to happen time and time again. And it is for this reason that I firmly believe that all of the problems of creation cannot somehow be more than creation. Said another way, everything that is everything that everything needs. Now, actual droughts and floods are solved by engineers, right? That's how you build pipes. But the problems of humanity are not engineered because those goods are not transported through pipes. Those are paths that are made straight through our hearts and minds, through generosity, through empathy, through compassion, through creativity, and through love. Now, you might be sitting there and saying, okay, Tim, I get it, that there's enough out there in the world, but I'm not always sure that I'm the right person to do it. Clearly there's something to be done, but are we the ones to do it? And to that, I would like to bring our minds back to the notion of narrative fidelity that I talked about on the first night. So narrative fidelity, just as a reminder, it is the argument that people accept a story when the narrative fits into the pre-established prior experiences of the audience. Right? So you'll believe something if it fits with the rest of what you know. Now, flexible storytellers, how you use this in persuasion is that you are strategic about the things that you say to take advantage of the world that exists inside the other person so they'll accept the piece that you're trying to give them. Right? The faithful storyteller tailors the tale so it's faithful to the tales the audience already knows. You play on their prior experience and you build on what the listener already accepts to be real, good, beautiful, and true. Alter the story just a little, you can make it more applicable and more faithful to the world of the listener. Right? That's it as a persuasive strategy. But what do you do when you don't want to change the story? So in the context of the retreat, there are 2 narrative dilemmas that I experienced. There are 2 stories that I don't want to change. The first is a story about homelessness that I want to believe. I want to believe that ordinary people commit themselves to making real change, both large and small, that they reach out, forge bonds, overcome adversity, and change nothing less but the landscape of the entire society. And I really want to believe that that's possible, but sometimes I feel foolish. There's another story about homelessness, or set of stories that I want to know about homelessness that I find difficult to understand also. It's the stories and trials of actual homeless people and the troubles that they face. the realities of the shelter system, the difficulties with the police, the troubles getting food. I want to know these stories, but for some reason, it's difficult to understand them. It's difficult for them to sink in. Now, both of these dilemmas are caused for the same reason, because of a lack of fidelity. I can't believe the hopeful narrative because it just doesn't seem believable, right? It doesn't measure up with my previous experiences, which is that people often fail to make the change that they want to. I also have difficulty oftentimes understanding the stories of urban homelessness because they're so distant from my actual experiences that they hardly seem real. Now, like I said, a flexible storyteller would change the stories, but I don't want to. I don't want to change the optimistic narrative because that's the life I want to live, and I think that it's worth living for. And I don't want to change the painful narrative of homelessness because in doing so, I would make invisible the suffering of actual people. So if the story must match my life in order for it to truly sink in, and I am unwilling to change the story, then I have to change my life. Right, and here beats the true heart of this weekend. The stories that we heard today and yesterday aren't radically different than what we might expect. The forward-thinking optimism of the future are not like other planning sessions. But sometimes it's the stories that don't need changing. Sometimes it's the listener. And Fidelity suggests that if you only accept the stories that resonate with your prior experiences and there are stories you want to believe, then be strategic about the experiences that you have in order to more fully accept the stories that you want to believe. When I first conceived of this retreat, I thought we would build a new story for the Stand-Up for Kids community. But I discovered that we already knew it. The retreat fleshes out details every time, it's true. But most importantly, it readies our bodies, it readies our hearts, it readies our minds to more honestly understand the trials of today and more earnestly undertake the triumph of tomorrow. So where do we go from here? If you're new to Stand Up for Kids, or relatively new, consider this the greatest training session ever. Right? You learned everything there is about the organization, and frankly, new things developed about the organization on this retreat, and you're kind of on the cutting edge, right? You know what we do, you know where we are, you know the people that we work with. But for all of us, new and old, consider it an invitation. An invitation to all of the different sorts of things that we've talked about. There's program development that needs to be done, fund development, networking, social planning. We need outreach leads. We got outreach 2 times a week. Why not 7 times a week? Why not 7 times a week in 4 different parts of the city? Why are the houses only open 2 nights a week? Why is it that we're scrambling for money, right? All of these things are things that we can do, and by changing our experiences, hopefully you feel more invited in order to do them. So I hope, if I teach you anything today, if you learn anything from me at all, let it be this. Remember that each of us, every one of us, is a tiny, fragile, unique, and necessary part of a flawless and beautiful whole. We are each irreplaceably significant, the only possible and wholly needed answer to the problems that we solve, and we are the only one who can fill the roles that we take on. We are special, the novel manifestation of a divine plan, and each of us is immeasurably valuable. But remember, it only works when we pull together and help each other.